Hello everyone. So today I'm back with my new video which is on Emily Dickinson as a lyric poetess. In our previous video we have studied Emily Dickinson's mysticism, and now another question which is frequently asked in MA English literature is Emily Dickinson as a lyric poetess. So let's study one by one all these points. First of all, I would like to let you know about the outline we will cover in this video. First is about the poetess, next introduction, then a lyric poetess, and at last conclusion. So, about the poetess. She was born on December 10, 1830 in Amherst, Massachusetts, US, and died on 15th May 1886 at the age of 55 in Amherst, Massachusetts, US. By occupation, she was a poet. Alma mater was Mount Holyoke Female Seminary, and notable works by her were I taste liquor never brewed, because I could not stop for death, and yield such an alcohol. So, coming to the point again, introduction. Emily Dickinson was preeminently a lyric poet. Her lyric output is indeed amazing. Her lyrics covered a wide range of subjects: love, pain, and suffering, death, nature, etc. The range of her moods in these lyrics is also very wide, from ordinary joy to a feeling of ecstasy, and from mild regret to deep despair. This is hardly any mood that does not find expression in these poems. So, it is about the Emily Dickinson as a lyric poet, and I have shared you and just an introduction. We will study one by one every point. Let's study Emily Dickinson as a lyric poetess. So there are 8 points. First is dislike for her long narrative poems. Emily Dickinson's genius was essentially lyrical. Poetry was the way in which she could unburden her soul. She had no liking for long narrative poems, which require organic unity and structural coherence. Emily Dickinson was conscious of the limitations of her genius and never tried to overreach herself. She restricted herself to lyrical form for which her circumstances and genius attuned her. Actually, as I have told you in my previous video also, that she used to live in a room which was the upper part of her house, and that's why her atmosphere was like this, that her and her circumstances, we can say also that she used to be in the mood of always writing poems on mysticism, and you can say lyric poet, narrative poem, and a poem on nature. So, this was her genius. And then I am reading again the line. She was born and brought up in puritanic atmosphere, and she became conversant with the hymn form at an early age. So she wrote short lyric hymns instead of long narratives. So here we studied about her dislike for long narrative poem. Actually, she used to write very short poems, and we will cover some of her poems critical appreciation also in our next videos. Next slide right now is about departure from from the conventional lyric. Her lyrics do not breathe the conventional air. The two major characteristics, exuberance of emotion and flamboyance of expression, which are usually associated with lyrical poetry, are non existent in the poetry of Emily Dickinson. Likewise, her poetry lacks the slow, retreating, harmonious note of epic poetry. Her poetry does not seek to preserve the leisurely details of any type. Its purpose is only to objectify the swift passing moments and give them poignant expression. Next slide is about her lyrics are full of melody. So, Actually, her melody is effortless, and it is not the melody of ping pong rhymes and tinkling piano tunes of her contemporaries. It comes to us like bolts from the blue and jolts our consciousness because the emotion communicated by them is not pure and unmixed. It is blended with thoughts. Her emotions are mixed with thoughts which necessitate restraint. Is restrained cadence and intellectualized emotion make her a modern poet indeed, although she did not lay claim to start a new trend in American poetry as Walt Whitman did. Next is about true subjective element in her poetry. A lyric is always personal in the sense that the emotions expressed in it are the poet's own. Hence, a lyric is subjective since the emotions expressed in a lyric are the poet's own. The poet, to that extent, becomes the subject matter of his poetry. Emily Dickinson's lyrics reflect the eccentricities, the mind, and the sense of humor of Emily Dickinson. Most of the poems are reflections of her mind. Thus, it would be correct to call her a lyric poet. But actually, this point should not be stretched too far. She was not writing as such about her own emotions, you can say, as of the emotions and the sense impossible of a supposed narrator of the poem. She wrote to Higginson, where I state myself as the representative of the verse, it does not mean me but the supposed person. So we can say here that true subjective element was always there in her poems. Next slide is about lyrics loaded with thought. A lyric may roughly be defined as an emotional and imaginative expression is essentially expressions of ideas, though these expressions are charged with emotion. No poem deserves to be called a lyric if the idea is not emotionally expressed. Her lyrics are loaded with thought. Miss Dickinson's lyrics are deficient is in another important requirement also. Many of her poems are jarring discontent. She cared more for a shrewd, vivid, and forceful expression of her thought than of the aesthetic quality of words. The most conspicuous feature of her lyricism is its intensity. It is the depth of feeling that lends to her lyrics a high quality. So lyrics, her every poetry you will read. So you will find their lyrics are totally loaded with her thoughts. Thought process is different from other poets of her age. And next slide is about the intensity of her love lyrics. Miss Dickinson's lyrical intensity can be illustrated even by a random selection of her poems. A large group of her love poems center around the ritual of marriage. An intensity of feeling is the keynote of these poems, also the betrothal in heaven because an obsessive image with her. Her two finest poems on the earthly heavenly marriage are title define is mine and mine by the right of the white election. Both these poems show an intensity of feeling. Another poem, The Love Our Life Can Show Below, is an effort to catch a glimpse of supreme beauty. All these poems show that Miss Dickinson's force as a love poet is strongest when she imbues physical passion with religious feeling. So, we studied here that the intensity of her love lyrics are totally based on marriage first of all. Next slide is about the intensity of pain and sufferings in her lyrics. Miss Dickinson wrote many poems dealing with human sufferings and pain. There is a wide range of pain in her poems. Many of her poems of pain deal with the moment after a near disaster. Perhaps her finest poem about pain and one of her artistic achievements is After Great Pain. This is a poem. A formal feeling comes. So, some of her best lyrics on the death consider the sensation of dying person or the physical experience as the soul leaves the body. Perhaps her most popular poem on the subject of death is the one that begins because I could not stop for death, which deals with the effect of death upon a human being. So we can say that the intensity of her poems are based on pain and sufferings also. Next slide is about the intensity of her nature lyrics. Miss Dickinson wrote a large number of nature poems, some of which have because famous. So one of her most celebrated nature poem is A Route of Evanescence. The poem effectively presents the sensation of the ruby-throated humaning birds whirling flight and disappearance. Another poem gives us an arresting conceit and striking image in the following lines depicting sunrise and sunset and the comparing the rising scene to the leaping leopards. So the lines are like this: blazing in gold and quenching in purple, leaping like leopards to the sky. In the well known poem A Narrow Fellow in the Grass, she expresses the terror that a shake arouses. A series of artistic progressions develop the image of the shake into a symbol of unknown. The shake's fondness for primitive swamps hints at this creature's biblical association with evil and desolate places of the earth. So, actually, the intensity of our nature lyrics are like this, as we have studied in this slide. Next is about conclusion, which is not last but not the least, conclusion. Dickinson's seclusion allowed her to focus on developing her poetry. Her poems addressed emotional and psychological states such as loneliness, pain, happiness, and ecstasy. Death often personified religious and morality, as well as love and love lost. So, uh, this is all about today's slides. So now let's meet in our next video. Thank you for now and bye to all.